Hello and welcome to all the viewers. Today we are going to continue from the session taken last time on statistical significance and hypothesis testing. What we are going to learn in this session is about the errors which can occur when we talk about analysis of our hypothesis or conclusions to be made from our hypothesis. And these errors are known as type 1 and type 2 errors. Now, to understand these type 1 and type 2 errors, we need to first look back into what we have talked about in the earlier session, that is the critical concepts in hypothesis testing. This is kind of a revision of what we have learned earlier in terms of stating the null hypothesis. That was the first step which we talked about in hypothesis testing. So as we all are aware by now, there are two kinds of hypothesis, the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. The process of hypothesis testing or the procedure begins with assumption that the null hypothesis is true. If I refer you back to the example on coffee drinking and pancreatic cancer. So we start with our assumption that there is no association between coffee drinking and pancreatic cancer. So that is nothing but our null hypothesis. And when we start with our null hypothesis, we do assume that this is the truth. So what we are basically trying to do is we are trying to gather evidence in order to check whether this statement which we have made at the earlier part of our hypothesis testing is true or false. So basically we are looking towards proving that the alternative hypothesis is true or the null hypothesis is not likely to be true. Now the words true, false may be confusing at times, but what we need to remember is there is this language which we use in statistics which is very important for all of us to understand. So the decisions to be made on the null hypothesis could be two. So if we get enough evidence to support our alternative hypothesis, we fail to accept the null hypothesis. Some people use the word reject the null hypothesis, but it is appropriate to use the term fail to accept as compared to the word reject because it's more of a negative term and we preferably do not use it. However, anyone who wants to use the term reject is also not wrong. So we say that either we fail to accept the null hypothesis or we reject the null hypothesis. However, if we find that there is no enough evidence to support our alternative hypothesis, and how do we gather this evidence? Just to recall, we said that in order to test our hypothesis, we apply statistical procedures. We use statistical tests and we test it against the p-value in order to check for the significance. So if we do not get any significance, then we say that we do not have enough evidence, in which case we have to accept our null hypothesis. So when we talk about making conclusions about our null hypothesis, I'm going to present to you in the next slide a table which is a 2x2 table which we have seen earlier when we talked about study designs or we have talked about screening. So this 2x2 table will give us an idea about the correct and the incorrect conclusions which we are likely to make when we consider our hypothesis testing. So when we talk about possible outcomes of our hypothesis, we are likely to commit type 1 and type 2 errors. Please do remember, this question is always asked in competitive exams about errors in hypothesis testing, and there are only two types of errors which are likely to occur. There is no type 3 or type 4 error in hypothesis testing. Please do remember, any kind of study which you do is not likely to be perfect. There will always be a chance of error. Our attempt is basically to minimize the error as much as possible and eliminate errors wherever it is doable. Right, so now let's look at the table which is given to you. I said earlier it is a 2x2 table. 2x2 means it has 2 columns and 2 rows, right? Now, along the rows you have your decision with reference to your null hypothesis, and along the columns you have whether the null hypothesis is actually true or it is actually false. Now, let's look at the correct conclusions which we are likely to derive from looking at our null hypothesis. So in case your null hypothesis is true and you accept it, This is what we call as the correct conclusion. For example, if you find that there is no association between pancreatic cancer and coffee drinking, so and in that case you accept your null hypothesis, so that is your correct conclusion because your null hypothesis is true. There is no evidence to prove that coffee drinking really is associated with pancreatic cancer, in which case you accept your null hypothesis, which makes it a correct conclusion. Other scenario would be when the null hypothesis is false. Okay, false means basically alternative hypothesis is true in the sense that there is actually an association between coffee drinking and pancreatic cancer, and since there is an association found after application of statistical tests, your conclusion would be to not accept the null hypothesis, or in other words fail to accept null hypothesis, or for those who like the word reject, we reject the null hypothesis. If you reject or if you fail to accept a null hypothesis when it is false, it is a correct conclusion. So in order to remember if you are doing the right thing, when your null hypothesis is false, please remember the alphabet F. You fail to accept the null hypothesis. If you do that, you have correctly made your decision. Now, what happens is sometimes we do not get correct conclusions from our null hypothesis, in which case we commit what we call as errors. And as I said earlier, there are only two types of errors which are likely. Let's first look at the type 1 error. In a situation in which the null hypothesis is actually true, if we fail to accept that, or in other words we reject the null hypothesis, we commit what we know as a type 1 error. So in the example of pancreatic cancer and coffee drinking, if actually by gathering evidence we find that there is no association between pancreatic cancer and coffee drinking, but we overlook this and we fail to accept our null hypothesis, we are committing what we know as a type 1 error. The other scenario would be when your null hypothesis is actually not true or it is false, but you accept it. That makes you commit a type 2 error, also known as a beta error. Now you can see that there is alpha error, alpha and beta. These are the two Greek alphabets which are here. They represent type 1 error and type 2 error respectively. So alpha is nothing but type 1 error and beta is nothing but type 2 error. So these are the different outcomes which are likely when you do hypothesis testing. If you have your correct conclusions when you accept the null hypothesis when true, or you fail to accept it when it is false, you have it done correctly. But in scenarios wherein you do the other way around, you commit a type 1 or a type 2 error, depending on what conclusion you have come to. Now let's talk a bit about this alpha and beta and what is the relationship between alpha and beta. So, if you remember, we said that we choose our alpha, which I also mentioned earlier as the allowable error. And for conventional purposes, we use alpha as 0.05. What does 0.05 mean? To revise, when you say that the alpha is 0.05, it means that there is only a 5 in 100 chance that your result is going to be termed significant due to chance alone. So, which means that your null hypothesis is actually true, but you are going to reject it only in 5% of times if you are looking at 5 in 100. So, the probability of making a type 1 error, the chance of making a type 1 error can be reduced. As I said, we try to minimize the errors, right? So, in order to reduce this probability of making a type 1 error, you can alter the level of significance. So as we had discussed earlier, we can have alpha set to 0.05, 0.01, 0.001, and smaller the number, greater is our chance that we make a correct conclusion. So what is important is, however, by altering the level of significance or by reducing the level of significance, the problem would be we will find it more and more difficult to find a significant result. And that is why the risk of a type 2 error will be increased. So what do we understand from this? If you try to minimize a type 1 error, the type 2 error is going to increase. So in other words, we have an inverse relationship between type 1 and type 2 errors. You go to reduce one, you are likely to increase the other. So you go to reduce alpha, that is type 1 error, you are likely to increase the chance of having a type 2 or a beta error. So what is this beta error and how we reduce it? We increase the level of significance, because if you saw for alpha, we said we reduce the level of significance. Beta error can be reduced by increasing the level of significance. Now, in order to increase the level of significance, of course, you will have to set your alpha to more than 0.05, because of which you are more likely to increase the chance of a type 1 error. Now, the question here is, to which type of error you are willing to risk? According to you, which one is worth risk taking, whether you would go for a type 2 error or you would accept a type 1 error. So now to explain this concept, we are going to look at an example wherein we are trying to apply a test, a new test for a particular disease diagnosis. Okay, so please understand this with the help of this example. So I said that we assume that there is a test for a particular disease. Now, logically speaking, if the disease is easily diagnosed and detected early by this test which you are examining, what is the advantage to your patients is that the disease can be successfully treated, and a lot of complications and other problems arising out of the disease can be easily prevented. Okay. The other likely outcome would be, if your patient is not diagnosed properly, and in view of that, if the patient is not treated, the person will be severely disabled. So there could be complications arising because of no treatment and no diagnosis of the disease. But there is another problem. If the person who is erroneously diagnosed or is not diagnosed correctly as having the disease and treated, then there can be no physical damage done, or the outcome would be the patient is just treated though the patient doesn't have the disease. Now the issue over here is, which one should we take a risk of? Right. Now again, we put a 2 by 2 table here, where now you have replaced your null hypothesis being true and null hypothesis being false by no disease and disease respectively, and your acceptance or failure to accept the null hypothesis as not diagnosed and diagnosed. So now this, you can take a look at this and you can see that if a person doesn't have a disease and is not diagnosed, that's the perfect decision you make. If the person has the disease and is correctly diagnosed by the test, that's another perfect decision. The issue arises when a person is actually not having a disease, but your test is showing that person to suffer from the disease, or in other words, the person is diagnosed of the disease which he doesn't have. That makes you commit what we call as a type 1 error. However, if the person is not diagnosed but has the disease, we commit what we call as a type 2 error. So type 1 error is nothing but the person is treated on account of having been diagnosed but is not harmed by the treatment. Okay. Whereas when we look at type 2 error, the person is not diagnosed when he actually has the disease, because of which irreparable damage or complications may arise due to your act. So now the question still arises, to which error are you more likely to risk your patient? So you have to avoid type 2 error. You cannot leave a person undiagnosed when he actually suffers from the disease, otherwise he will end up in complication. So if we look at this concept now from the point of view of hypothesis testing, our decision should be to avoid type 2 error, in which case we can have a high level of significance. So if you remember, I said earlier, you need not have an alpha which is very low unless and until you have other considerations, that you have a large sample size, or you can be sure that you are likely to get a significant result. So you can have a high level of significance in order to avoid type 2 error. Now One more way to explain type 1 error and type 2 error is what we call as the judge's dilemma, or what we call as convicting the defendant phenomenon. Now, this is the judge, okay, and he is the one who has the authority to give a decision about a person who has been convicted of a crime. Okay, now whether to convict the defendant or not is what we call as comparing with either failing to accept your null hypothesis or accepting your null hypothesis. Okay, now please look at this very carefully. We will first now talk about type 1 error. If you remember, what we said was type 1 error is committed when we fail to accept the null hypothesis when it is actually true. Okay, so that is your type 1 error. So when you are talking about a criminal trial wherein the judge is sitting in order to give his judgment, so when you're talking about giving the decision whether the defendant is innocent or not guilty, so if an innocent person is considered as guilty on the basis of evidence provided or no evidence provided, this person or the judge is making what we call as a type 1 error, wherein an innocent is not considered as innocent, whereas he is given the term as considered as guilty. Okay, so that's about type 1 error. Whereas when we look at a person who has committed the crime but is considered to be not guilty due to lack of sufficient evidence against him, the judge is committing what we call as a type 2 error. Now the question remains, which one is more serious, whether convicting an innocent person or leaving a person scot-free who has actually committed the crime? So in practice, the type of error which is most serious is the type 2 error. Okay, so that is what we need to understand when we look at the errors in hypothesis testing. So with this, we come to end of this session on type 1 and type 2 errors. Please do keep watching, do subscribe, and have a nice day.